So I was on Voice FM the other day and I got the date wrong in my diary, so I didn't even know that I was on the radio until my friend texted me saying that I was on the radio. So I didn't tell anyone about it, which was a bummer. But what I've managed to do is get the lovely Dianna at Voice FM to send me the show, and I've cut and pasted all the bits together so that you can listen to it. And if this incoherent ramble wasn't enough, you can have another 23 minutes worth of it. Enjoy.
Welcome, my name is Diana, and this is the Arts and Culture Show. If you're joining us, I hope you guys are doing okay. Today, we have a really special guest. We will be talking to music artist and creative Kat Eliza Tarrant. We'll be talking to her about her songwriting, the genres that inspire her artistry, and Kat's natural ability to tell a great story through song. We discuss bluegrass, her upbringing, and how through that her musical journey began. But just a little bit about bluegrass and folk music. Bluegrass music is a genre of American roots music that developed in the 1940s in the United States of America. The genre derives its name from the band Bill Monroe and Bluegrass Boys. Unlike mainstream country music, bluegrass is traditionally played on acoustic stringed instruments. And then also a little background about folk and country music. Its impeccable way of telling a story and developing what can sometimes be seen as a poetic narrative for its audience. As with Kat's music, as she beautifully constructs her stories within her artistry, as you will hear later on in the show with her 2020 track release, Silent Water, which I look forward to so many of you listening to. So let's get into this conversation with Kat, where she discusses her artistry, her musical influence, and her musical upbringing. She also discussed her hauntingly beautiful song, Silent Waters, released in November of 2020, which will be played later on in the show. So let's get into it. Brilliant. Great. Hi, Kat. Thank you so much for joining me. How you doing?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm good. I hope you're okay.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. There's so much I want to kind of talk to you about because one, I've been aware of you being a musician since I kind of landed in Southampton, like probably like 2.5 years ago. And and
Wow, time flies.
yeah, and I always had you in the back of my mind because I really have always appreciated your music, especially your bluegrass folk type of
Aw.
group that you've come from. And so it's just to kind of have that conversation with you about your music and your artistry and how it's developed since you started music. And so I think what I'll ask first is what got you into music?
Um, I didn't really have a choice. um, so uh, my dad is a bluegrass Americana
Mm,
musician.
mm,
Um, and my mum is a classical musician, pianist.
mm,
And so I grew up um, both in both those kinds of worlds, both as this feral hippie kid at music festivals running around with like covered in mud, and then and then also kind of going to classical concerts and I remember like falling asleep at the top of the Central Hall in Southampton quite often because
right.
the concerts were just too long and I was only a bubba. Um, so yeah, I think it would be odd if I wasn't a musician in some way just because of my upbringing, possibly genetics as well.
It's crazy because I think anyone who kind of goes into music always says like I was brought up on music. But one of the things I've always what I've admired about your music is that you have this impeccable way of painting a very vivid picture with your words. And that's something that's very bluegrass and very country. How have you developed that type of storytelling? Because it's not the most easiest thing to do, and you do it so effortlessly.
Oh, thanks. That's really nice. Well, I watched my dad. I think I was watching my dad perform once, and he said I might be misquoting him. He he said that bluegrass music has this ability to tell an absolutely horrific story
Yeah.
while sounding incredibly upbeat.
Mm.
And that really struck a chord with me when I was younger. I thought that's an amazing thing. So I think it's sort of a lot of my music kind of starts from that idea
Mm.
of not necessarily thinking about the song sounding sad or sounding a certain way. It's
Yeah.
just it's almost like the story and the melody or music around it, although they do eventually will fit together, they're just two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
um uh in terms of storytelling, I don't that's a um
When I do think of your storytelling, I think foundationally, which connects to bluegrass, Irish, and folk,
mhm.
and how you guys kind of and how that kind of communicates in heritage in a way, because I think that's what kind of comes through with what you do. And so it's it's fascinating to me, like songs like Silent Waters, the picture you paint with that. I think it was beautiful. Not only was it beautiful, but the harmonies and the layering. I was
Thanks.
just like, that's so gorgeous. So if you can like
Yeah.
explain that process, for example, of that song.
I mean, that's it's kind of funny because I actually wrote that song in about 5 minutes while I was sat in the passenger seat of the car on a long journey, and I just got a melody in my head, and then went, I need to write something down, and most of my songs just tend to come out of nowhere, for first off, and divine intervention maybe, and then whatever I happen to be obsessed with at the time.
Hmm.
So I'm a jack of all trades and kind of not really a master of any, and
But you're a multi-instrumentalist. I mean, you play the guitar, the ukulele, and the viola.
well, I'm all right at them. Um, um, so at the time when I wrote Silent Water, I'd just been to see a storyteller. I think it was the Traveling Talesman. So I'm
Mm,
friends with him. He's a guy called Cliff, and he did loads of stories on the sun and the moon,
great.
ancient tales, and I thought that's just so amazing. There are hundreds of these stories across the world that are about the sun and the moon, and whether they're a brother and sister, whether they're lovers, maybe they're quarreling siblings or something.
Mm,
And so the song is about a boy and a girl who are in love, but they never get to meet. They're always sort of chasing each other.
mm,
And then there's a joke in folk music, um, uh, which is kind of like 90% of folk songs end in the woman drowning herself. So I thought, well, I have to spoiler for the song. Sorry, anyone that
yes.
so I thought, oh, it has to have that in there as well. So it's that's just those two elements that all came together with that one. But yeah, that song just sort of wrote itself.
Fact that you wrote something so vivid in 5 minutes, that's impeccable. That's kind of breathtaking to me, because if, for example, if I sat there trying to write something, I couldn't come up with anything. So I think it's a testament to you as a songwriter that you're able to even just be in a back of a car, and you might see water, and then, or you think of a traveling talesman, and being able to write something that to me was just so beautiful, and the production, the harmonies of it was just, it added it added to the story in a way that felt like you were taking you on a journey of what was happening. And I find that relates a lot to Irish folktale, that it takes you on a journey. And I find that that's what your music does.
Yeah.
When it comes, because you live in Southampton and we're surrounded by the environment, the greens and things, do you find that Southampton itself inspires your music? And how does that kind of creative process flow for you?
Oh wow. I've never thought of that before. I think inevitably your environment and when I say environment, I don't just mean spaces and places, but I mean
Mhm.
people as well,
Mhm.
are going to have a huge impact on your music and what you create. I mean, I love being by the sea. That's something that is just an integral part of who I am. I'm always happiest on the coast.
Mhm.
And I'm studying horticulture, so I guess I like green spaces as well. Though I haven't written any songs about plants yet. I think that's down the road maybe. Um, yeah, I think just the perhaps the Southampton music scene is just really vibrant and varied, and I
Mhm.
think I'm constantly inspired by other performers and other bands and things that they may have done, or I see them on stage and I think, oh, that's a really interesting idea. I hadn't thought of anyone doing that before. You know, you can't necessarily do anything original. You can just do the same as someone else but slightly different. And it's 2020 whatever, and now everyone's done everything, right?
Yeah, nothing new under the sun. But I think you're hearing your songs is a bit of a breath of fresh air. There's always this is it sounds fresh and it sounds new because I my grandmother grew up listening to country, and so that's something I've always been aware of. And so listening to your music to me is a breath of kind of
Oh,
fresh air and how it sounds. It sounds absolutely beautiful. Now you've
thank
been around Southampton, especially around its music scene.
you.
Tell me a little bit about that and the journey into that and how it's been for you, and also connecting with other artists.
Yeah, so I was born in Southampton,
Mm,
and then I went away to near London for uni, and came back after a bit after uni, and I was just really lonely. I was in my early 20s, and I didn't know anyone, um, and I started going to open mic nights as much as I could. Um, in particular the Candle Club that happened at the Talking Heads, back when it was in Portswood. And I started playing there, started meeting people. People would come over and ask questions about it, or say like, "Oh, I liked this," or "That was interesting," and I'd do the same to other people.
mm,
And I ended up getting offered a job behind the bar just from going there each week and meeting people and making friends, and it kind of grew from there. I started going to there's a thing called So Far Sounds,
mm,
songs from a room, and they're these sort of intimate gigs that tend to be in unusual spaces or people's front rooms.
mhm,
And I just started going to those on my own and making friends that way. And most people were either music fans or musicians themselves.
yeah.
And it just grew from there. I think if you want to start somewhere, start with open mics. I think they're a really valuable experience. And I ended up running an open mic at the stable in Southampton for a while as well, which was a
Mm,
really rewarding experience. And they're good as well because you get everyone, all different walks of life, all different genres of music. You might have
mhm.
someone doing rap or beatbox at one point, and then someone else is doing some like Beatles covers, and it's just a wonderful collection of all these different kinds of musicians and tastes.
And I think what you're saying is it speaks volumes about Southampton because one of the things that I've noticed as well is like through open mics, it kind of tells a story and a narrative about the musical landscape Southampton has and what it has to offer with the gifts and talents out there. When it comes to collaboration with other artists, how is that process for you? And is that something you go out really seeking, or is that something that just naturally tends to happen?
For the most part, I think it just tends to happen. You start, depending on your genre, you start playing the same sort of gigs with the same sort of people, and you end up going, "Oh, hey, we
Mm,
played that gig a couple months ago," and then you become genuine friends, and then you might end up organizing your own gig with those people.
mhm,
Um, and then before you know it, you've accidentally learnt their songs because you've watched them a few times. You start singing on it, or you go, "Hey, I play," like I do. I go, "Hey, do you want some violin, some viola? I'm gonna put that on there for you."
mm,
But I just really enjoy. I personally really enjoy collaborating with other people. It gives me a lot of joy to add elements to other people's music. You can learn a lot from joining in on other people's stuff as well.
mhm,
I mean, sometimes you might get someone reach out and say, "Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that?" Um, and usually I say yes. Sometimes I'm too busy, but
mm,
I think something that I tend to live by just every day is that you're more likely to regret having not done something
mhm,
than having done something. Or if you're feeling grumpy, and you think, oh, I'm not going to go out, I'm not going to go see XYZ or go to this place or that place. If you actually get yourself to just get up and go, by
Mm.
the end of the day, you're, oh, I'm so glad that I went. And I think the same applies to working with other people.
We get to listen to Cat Eliza T's track Silent Waters, which was released in November of last year, 2020. And as you listen, I hope you enjoy it. I think it's a wonderful track.
There once was a boy who was shining. He shone out a light so bright, and a girl whose light was waning. She only shone in the night, but every time her eyes caught him, he danced out of sight to the bay, for he knew that she loved the water and thought they could meet by the wake. Water, water, silent water, water, water by the bay. For she hadn't the brightest of gleamings, but he thought her skin so fair. She shone like a pearl by the water, and he dreamed to go dance with her there. Water, water, silent water, water, water by the bay. But whenever she reached the water, his patience had run out of time. So they chased each other around and around, a waltz for the planet and love in three-quarter time. Water, water, silent water, water, water by the bay. After years of no dancing, the girl couldn't chase anymore. She walked into the water, and the boy would see her no more. Water, water, silent water, water, water by the bay.
Great tunes. We had Cat's beautiful track, Silent Water. And then after we had Koala with Chasing and Wasting Time. If you're just joining us, welcome. Though we are nearing to the end, before we do, we're back with Kat, where she discussed what's next for her. And if she can describe Southampton's music scene in one word, what would it be? Check it out. When it comes to just people in general, when it comes to connecting to an audience, how important that is for you and kind of how they're able to relate to your music. What has that been like?
That's so important. I think a lot of the gigs I play tend to be more intimate ones.
Mm.
Uh, I enjoy playing ones where you know you can literally see the whites of people's eyes; they're that close.
Mm.
And I think that just lends itself, possibly because of the kind of storytelling element and folk element, of my music, perhaps.
Yeah.
And also, I like to have a laugh.
Yeah.
And just be a bit tongue in cheek, or I can throw random stuff at the audience, and they'll try and like knock it back. And I do audience participation bingo, so always halfway through my gig I'll have found something that I don't want in my house, like
Yeah.
just a knick-knack or something stupid or rubbish that I think, well, I don't need this, and rather than putting it in the bin or giving it to a charity shop, I force someone in the audience to win it, which is always really, really funny. Or, hey, you've won something that I don't want. Congratulations.
Well, I think that adds an element of fun to it. When you go to a gig, that person won't forget that and think that was a really great time. So
Hmm.
adding something like that, I think it adds character to a show. Because usually when you go to a show, you go and see the audience, you go to see the artist, and it's great. But to have that little element, that little intimate moment with them, I think it speaks volumes about the showmanship an artist has, and not being afraid of connecting with an audience, with an audience, which I think your music shows greatly. Um, I think the last question I have for you is, it might be a pretty hard question, but just for the sake of it, if you can describe Southampton sound, how would you describe that?
A cacophonous, amorphous, beautiful note cluster.
I think that sums it up pretty much, especially with all the genres that's out there. That would definitely sum up. It is a cluster of greatness and goodness and just amazement. I think that was perfect. Thank you so much for that.
This was a soundbite if ever there was one.
That was a perfect soundbite. Thank you. Right. Kat, thank you so much for taking the time for me to interview you. But also, before we go, you have a show on the 24th of July, if you want to plug that and let everyone know where and what time.
I do. So it's at the Art House, and it's an evening of poetry as well, with a local poet called Anita Foxall.
Mhm.
And I believe it starts at 7. But don't quote me on that. But yes, if you like some spoken word, if you like some poetry, and you also like listening to me ramble and sing songs in between, then you should definitely come to the Art House, which is an amazing venue. And I haven't set foot in there for what feels like eons. So you should all come along and enjoy the night.
Great. Thank you so much, Kat. It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you for your generosity.
It's been lovely talking to you too. It's been great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kat, for allowing me to interview you. It was wonderful to speak to you about your work and your talents and how you're pushing culture forward in Southampton. Thank you so much for your time. If you would like to find out more about Kat's music, you can follow her on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Kat Eliza T, spelled CATELIZAT. Also, you can check her out on the 24th of July, as she will be performing at Art House in Southampton City Centre at 7 p.m. To find out more, please visit www.thearthousesouthampton.org.